Hello history buffs and welcome to today's video. I'm going to apologise now for A, the lighting not being what it should be, and B, for this hideous background. My house is being turned upside down and there's just nothing I can do about it, so apologies in advance. Why do I look like I haven't even got any makeup on? On this day, the 19th of July 1553, Lady Mary Tudor was proclaimed Queen of England, in place of her first cousin once removed, Lady Jane Grey, or Queen Jane. But to understand this narrative better, we need to go back a bit. Mary Tudor was born on the 18th of February 1516 and was the only surviving child of King Henry VIII and his first wife and queen, Catherine of Aragon. Her father would go on to marry 5 more times, and Mary would be joined by 2 half-siblings, Elizabeth and Edward. As a result of her father's quest to produce male heirs, which is in itself an enormous simplification for the King's great matter and Henry's reign as a whole, but I really don't have time to get into that, as I don't want that to be the focus of today's episode. Mary and her sister Elizabeth were declared illegitimate. Their brother Edward was the only child of King Henry VIII to be recognised as a legitimate heir. The King's relationship with his children, especially his daughters, was strained at the best of times. However, thanks to their stepmother, Catherine Parr, tensions were eased, and Mary and Elizabeth were brought back into the line of succession. It was the King's wishes that if his son Edward was to die without issue, the throne would pass to Mary. If she died without issue, then Elizabeth. And if Elizabeth died without issue, the throne would then pass through the line of Henry's younger sister, Mary, not his elder sister, Margaret, which is arguably how it was supposed to go. And indeed, when Henry died on the 28th of January 1547, the throne passed to his only son, Edward, who became King Edward VI. The 9-year-old king would reign for 6 years before succumbing to TB. Edward had not married, as he was only 15 when he died, and although marriages had been made younger, it was still relatively early in what looks like a promising reign, and as such, he had no heirs. According to the 1544 Act of Succession, Edward's older sister Mary should be the next monarch upon his death. However, Edward had spent his reign continuing his father's Protestant Reformation, and Mary, well, she was a Catholic. If Edward was going to give the crown to her, she would undo arguably his life's work, which she would actually go on to do. And Elizabeth, well, she was illegitimate and the daughter of a convicted traitor. So Edward wrote a new device for the succession, which put his cousin, Lady Jane Grey, and her heirs male as his successors. This may or may not have been influenced by the Duke of Northumberland, who just so coincidentally actually happened to be Jane's father-in-law. Suspicious. Either way, upon Edward's death on the 6th of July, 1553, Jane was technically Queen of England. However, Queen Jane didn't find this information out herself until the 9th of July and expressed that she didn't want it, but she accepted the role because it was God's will. And also her parents put copious amounts of pressure on her to accept it. The Privy Council, meanwhile, had been working hard to try and make Jane's accession, and arguably usurpation, to the throne as smooth as possible. The Lady Mary, who should be the rightful queen, was rightfully furious when she found out that she had been skipped over for her younger cousin. And the 2 queens of England, Queen Mary and Queen Jane, raised an army. Mary, who had always been popular, won the support of her people, and they rallied round her. as many thought she should be the rightful queen. Jane, however, was relatively unknown, and people weren't so keen to fight for a queen that they didn't know, despite the fact that she offered 3 times the normal wage. 3 times the normal wage, and Jane still couldn't even buy herself an army. And those that she did recruit ended up switching sides later down the line. Even some of Jane's own Privy Council jumped ship when they realised that Jane was fighting a losing battle. And despite all of this, no fighting actually took place. Jane's father, Henry Grey, Duke of Suffolk, removed the cloth of state from his daughter's head on the 18th of July to show that she was no longer queen. The young teenager then asked her father if she could go home now. Jane, former Queen of England, was arrested, stripped of her valuables, and placed in a small house on Tower Green. She had only been queen for 13 days. And don't at me for the fact she ruled at 13 days. She was only aware of 9, hence the 9-day queen, but she was queen for 13 days. And I will die on this hill. So let's now skip to the 19th of July, 1553, the day after Jane's cloth of state was removed, the day we all came here for. The Lady Mary was proclaimed Queen Mary on the 19th of July, 1553, much to the delight of many Londoners. Jane's father, being the spineless coward that he was, raced to the Tower to proclaim Mary as the new queen, despite the fact that his daughter was mere feet away under arrest for treason. It wasn't just Jane's father who abandoned her. Frances Grey, Jane's mother, and her ladies-in-waiting also abandoned the former queen. Everyone was out to save themselves, and Jane's father-in-law, John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, the man who put her in that position, became the scapegoat. When Northumberland learnt that Mary was proclaimed as queen, to save his own skin, he cried. He had not been born of a high rank. He had fought his way tooth and nail to the top. He was so close to making Jane a legitimate queen. The reign of Queen Mary I officially started on this day, the 19th of July, in 1553. Mary would go on to reign for 5 years, dying alone and childless. The throne would then pass to her younger sister and last sibling, Lady Elizabeth, who would go on to be one of the greatest queens of England that we've ever seen. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, have a wonderful day. Bye!